What's good, YouTube fam? It's your boy Tony, aka Descendant of Chaos and Controversy, and I'm gonna discuss something that I know for a fact isn't gonna sit well with most. But if you hear me out, you may too sit back and ask these questions just to get a sense of clarity, so to speak. Now, recently it was asked, is America a racist country? And you will have many who would say, no, it isn't. And they'll state their reasons. And they'll say, hey, I'm an immigrant. I came here from an oppressed country where we didn't have certain liberties and freedoms and many of opportunities as we see when we came here to America. Okay. And then you'll have others that say, yeah, well, where we are at right now, we are slaves, I was able to progress. I was able to start my own business, do this, that, and everything, and the other. And no, America isn't a racist country. Okay. And then you have the counter argument saying that, yes, it is. Okay. Now, I know is a very touchy area to go and explore when you bring up certain events or details of history, because as we know what's going on today, it makes people very uncomfortable. But in regards to the context, ironically, there's a contradiction that lies within the whole dispute. Okay. So there's been many arguments against CRT, and I've addressed this before. And I'm sitting here listening to everybody's side and stuff like that. And the most point that's being made is that CRT is teaching kids how to be racist against white people. But ironically, they don't want to teach anything that has to do with the events that took place in America's history that basically excluded black people from society. And I guess many say, well, that's not where we are today. But I'm saying, is that completely true? Because if everything was so perfect, why are these discussions still being made? Okay. So I know I've heard something about something being passed where I think in Texas, they're not allowing or it's not going to be part of the main curriculum to teach anything about the civil rights movement. But wouldn't that be the key factor in the contributions or the contributing factor to say, hey, this is the basis of the foundation, to say this is what helped us get to where we are today, to give us a leg to stand on, to unify and not be diverse as far as being divided. But anyway, again, these are the questions you have to ask. Is America racist? See, anything that seems to go against or be anti this or anti that, it draws my attention and make me say, well, why? Okay? Why is it wrong to learn about slavery? Because apparently there is so much about slavery and the details about slavery that people are arguing against, and there's so many different areas that people are attacking the whole slavery issue, that it needs to be taught, but with the details of accuracy. Okay? Because there's many conflicting stories that surround that time, that everybody got their little stamp of, no, that's not what happened during the time of slavery. Oh, no, that's a lie. Oh, no. If you really want to know the truth, this is what really happened. This, that, and everything else. So, in order for there to be some correction, people need to go in and teach the actual details and events that took place. But then again, who's to say what's the truth? Then you want to talk about the Jim Crow era, okay? How that was practiced here in America. Who was it designed for, and who was it against? Okay? And from there, you had segregation, okay? I've talked about this many a times, of why segregation gave validation to the white privilege. Not so much in regards to like their standing as far as class goes or as wealth goes, but to not identify with the Negroes or be in the same boat as the Negroes or not standing on common ground with the Negroes, but to say that they were better than the Negro. Okay? And people actually went along with it. They supported segregation. You even had where there was talks with Joe Biden at the time. It was said that he supported segregation. Okay? Or why did he looked at it, why did people feel that it was wrong that segregation existed? Him questioning desegregation. Okay? Then you had like other areas that are uncomfortable to even review when you look at things such as when people were in the military, blacks that fought for this country. And that's another area to touch upon. When you get people say, well, won't you go back to Africa? You know, and that's ignorant, because people, you get upset when people call you a colonizer. But it takes no second thought or a skip of a beat to tell somebody to take their ass back to Africa if they have a validation in presenting their grievances and saying, hey, you know what? This is where America is flawed. This needs to be corrected. You know, people have fought, you know, for us to be where we are, and you're just shitting on it. Or you're trying to reverse all the progress that was being made. But if you attack, or if you address somebody who is anti-black, all of a sudden now you're anti-white. Or now all of a sudden you're racist. But it's okay for those to be anti-black and express their rhetoric, their racial rhetoric, and their beliefs, and be proud of it. But you can't point that out. Because then all of a sudden now you're a black person that's racist against whites who are racist towards blacks. Interesting. Okay. But then, like, not jumping ahead, but then, like, looking back at history, you looked at people who fought in the Civil War. You looked at people who fought, you know, in World War I and World War II. Blacks that fought in the battles with America fighting against Germany for the Holocaust, and how they were treated. I pointed out how the German POWs was treated better than the American soldiers who fought against Germany. In some cases, there were Negro soldiers that were put on the front line because they were deemed as being expendable to preserve the lives of their white fellow, so to speak, soldiers. There were black soldiers who was killed by their own, I can't say their own, but black American soldiers were killed by white American soldiers during those times. But the question is America a racist? You had athletes that fought to break down barriers when it came to discrimination, prejudices, racism. But even with all that being said, because people have fought in this country to be recognized, to say they belong, that's where the pride comes into play. That's why when the insult of go back to Africa is spewed, there's been many sacrifices in this country that black people have made to say that we belong, despite all the bullshit that we've dealt with. Okay? Yeah, Jesse Owens, who competed in the Olympics, I believe, in Germany, right? And it's not just him as being a representative for America who is black. And we are good enough to be exploited as representation when we're doing good. When we put America up on a pedestal when it comes to sports. But after it's all said and done, and we come back to America, business as usual. We appreciate you, making us look good, but, get back in your cage. Get back in your lane. So when people fought to break down those barriers in protest, when people say, hey, you know what? We don't approve of the Kaepernicks protesting, while they're playing sports. Athletes have been protesting, especially black athletes. Kaepernick wasn't nothing new. But then there was a twist to it. He was being unpatriotic. He was disrespecting the vets. That was the twist that was put on it. And all the other bullshit rhetoric that followed by both black people and white people. And here he is, a mixed individual. He was attacked because, you're mixed. What right do you have to complain about something? But on the flip side of that, you got some black people that tell people who are mixed, don't think that you're better than black people because you're not exempt from the experiences of being discriminated against, getting your ass beat by law enforcement, and everything else. And there's some validation in what they say. But ironically, nothing is ever good enough. There's always going to be some kind of backlash. There's always going to be somebody to be against somebody standing up for something. Or standing against injustices or wrongdoings. Which I don't get. Because then you got other people that state their grievances. To say, well, I can't speak on this platform because I get shut down. Or I can't go over here and speak on that platform because I get censored. But it'd be those same people that sit there and shit on a Kaepernick saying he ain't got a right to voice his opinions, but then complain about censorship. Being a little bit hypocritical and contradicting, don't you think? And I'm not a big sports fanatic. I see things somewhat on the surface of things. And like everything that happened after whatever, people can argue or not argue against. But I look at the primarities. You know what I'm saying? The initial reasoning. Everything that fell by the wayside, I don't give a fuck about. Okay? But for the initial reason to bring awareness to an issue that has been going on for some time, that has been ignored, that has been deflected from, conveniently being dismissive of. And then when you have all these other examples, all these other points of references coming into play to give credibility to the grievances, to the argument, to the complaint, still people find justification to deflect from that and say, oh, now you're playing the role of a victim. I don't think getting beat by the fucking cops or getting killed by the cops is playing victim, because you can play something and walk and still continue to live or go about your daily life. But when you cannot come back from something, that has nothing to do with being or playing a victim. None whatsoever. And in regards to the culture of law enforcement from the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s to where we are at today, it's been going on. The practices of targeting people is not fabricated. But because people don't want to research, look into the details of, just go by things on face value, until it starts affecting you. People are pushing against talking about the civil rights movement. People are talking against, talking about some of the horrors or the acts against humanity when it comes to, say, the Tulsa incident, the bombing of Black Wall Street, the Rosewood Massacre, the bombing of the Philadelphia housing complex, because people didn't approve of the MOVE organization that was trying to preserve life against the terroristic acts of law enforcement. The same goes for the same thing can be said against for the Black Panthers, the organization that practiced the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. But even that has a little conflict, because an armed Negro, whether he's educated or physically armed, is dangerous. They're considered a terrorist in regard as far as America is concerned. But anybody else that practices the same type of rights are patriotic or American, right? But anything that a black person does is un-American, unpatriotic. Even though we have, despite anything that went against us, we still go and sign up for the military and fight for a country that still don't really care too much for us, except for when it's convenient for them. And then people say America isn't racist, and then we bring the whole issue with the political arena into play. People had a lot of shit to say about Obama, right? And I have my reservations about us having a black president at the time when he was running for presidency. And they were like, oh, well, he seems to be a perfect candidate. He's out of Chicago. He's educated. He's been in politics. He's very well spoken. He comes from a diverse, mixed background. He doesn't seem to be a threat. He seems to be the perfect candidate for America. And I was like, oh, this is just one of those points of references where they could say, we threw y'all a bone. Okay? A presidential prop. He wasn't going to be taken serious from the get-go anyway. You saw that from the pushback he got in Congress and the Senate and all that, especially from the Republican Party. Anything that he tried to push, they knocked it and rejected it, and whatever the case may be. My personal foresight was that I assumed that, damn, America wasn't ready for a black president. I thought for sure he was going to get assassinated. You know, you seen what happened to JFK when, you know, he was talking about Americans come together, and, you know, how that didn't work well for him. You had the assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan. And I thought for sure when it came to Obama, he was going to be taken out within maybe the first year. But he made it to 2 terms. But it isn't to say he didn't face threats, that there wasn't any racial rhetoric that was thrown in his direction towards him, his wife, and his 2 kids. It isn't to say that if you go on to Google and see how they viewed Obama, you can see like puppets made where they had Obama hanging by a noose. Is America racist? You got people that exploit the black community to think that we are just entertainment for other people's purposes. That we don't have a good head on our shoulders because you only pinpoint and focus solely on certain demographics of people in the black community. Okay? And then you take those exploitations, those stereotypes, and give a broad generalization of who black people are in this country, within and outside. But America isn't racist. We have fought to bring about equality, civil rights, fairness in the fair housing, in banking, in education, in the workforce, in regards to fair pay and all of that. The transportation situation. We did all of that, and the sacrifices were made, and I said this before, so that anybody else coming in who wanted a shot at the American dream didn't have to go through what black people had to go through, and the sacrifices made so that there would be no barriers put in place to prevent people from having the opportunity as others. But even that was taken for granted. Even that was shitted on. Even that went unrecognized by everybody else that wanted to come in and gain the approval of those who were superior. And why? Because when you can see the examples of how black people are treated in this country, nobody want any parts of that. And I've said this before. So if America wasn't racist, then why do we have people who don't want to identify as being black? And this doesn't fall solely upon the ignorant areas in the black community. This is blacks as a whole. Not dissected, blacks as a whole. But let me talk about the division of blacks in America. It's disturbing to me, and I understand that there are those of us who want us in the black community to do and be better. But how to promote that message sometimes falls by the wayside and is a big major flop and an incredible failure. We spend more time pointing the finger at each other and where our faults lies that we don't take a look at ourselves and the flaws that are bestowed upon us. We are very critical of each other. There are those that I guess most would say rally for the white approval and look down upon everybody else. There are those that feel that there are others in the black community are too uppity and feel like they're better than those that are their peers. There are those that feel they have more rights to voice their opinions in the black community than other people do. Where people are on the totem pole as far as like class is concerned. How they carry themselves, their presentation. What actually defines the black culture? The righteous representation versus the poor representation. Whose fault is it? And while we are at such disagreement with each other, at such conflict amongst ourselves, we are just entertainment for everybody else. And then it comes down to, where do we get off? Where do we get off at talking down to others or about others when they have a right to present their grievances of something that has affected their community, that if you're not a part of, you have no right to even attack or address or make a mockery of. If you're living in an area where you're safe, where you're protected, where you don't have to deal with the issues or the inconveniences that other people are subjected to, and they're trying to do right by what their resources have that at their disposal, and they're trying to do right in their own life, and they're not part of any of the criminal element, and they're just trying to make it. They're putting their best foot forward. How dare you try to shit on them? How dare you? Because if they were to make the decision to be part of that criminal element or fuck up, you would still have something to say. That would give you more validation. But when they're trying to do better, when they're trying to make something of themselves, whether it's to get an education, work 2 jobs, be part of the family construct, but because they're not at the same level as you, you got something to say. You feel you have the right to look down upon. Who the fuck are you? Because I tell you, when we all fucking are finished and done here, guess where we're all going? In the fucking ground. And it ain't gonna matter what color we are. It ain't gonna matter what class we was a part of. But people don't get that. But is America racist? It's funny how there are many of those who are in support of the anti-black rhetoric. And I've seen it a lot, and people are that bold where they could come out and show their ass. So